Anyway, so we are here today to talk about a big topic for a lot of people. I know it was for me.
Yeah, it was for me too.
Yeah. And so I would love to hear, is this an issue for you, or has it been in the past an issue for you? How to get the horse on the bit? Do you know what this means? Is it still a little bit of a mystery? What it means or how to do it? I'd love to hear if you could type in the comments.
Yeah. When we promoted this event, we got some comments from people who sounded like they were born as Grand Prix riders and they know everything and they're perfect in every way. And they
that
thought
was
it
just
was
on the German one, not on the English one yet.
But they thought it was just a ridiculous thing to talk about, right? And but I think it's a real,
which is so condescending.
I know it is very condescending.
Because every rider has been at this stage at some point in their journey, and a lot of people get stuck there for years because it can be really difficult if you don't have the right information to figure out how to navigate it. You are really stuck, and you cannot progress in your training unless you can figure this one out.
I've mentioned in the past several times that in my early years, I had a riding lesson as one of those German, group lessons, everybody riding single file, sitting front around the arena. And my teacher was telling me that my horse needed to be more on the bit. And I was thinking like, well, gee, tell me something I don't know. I'd love to do it if I knew how, right? I don't ride my horse upside down on purpose, right?
Right.
And of course,
oops. I was doing that on purpose. What? You don't like that?
I know.
My horse all inverted with the back dropped, hind legs out behind. I thought this is what I'm supposed to do. Right? No.
That's sort of a typical scenario. I think that the teachers tell the students the horses need to be rounded, they need to be on the bit, blah blah blah, right? And the students would like to do it, but they just don't know how, and the teachers then don't explain it, right?
Right.
And part of the reason why this is not such a trivial issue is because it's not just a matter of a certain headset.
It's not just the bit, right? It's not the head.
Well, it's not just
the neck.
Yeah, it's not just a round neck and a vertical nose or whatever, head down, that sort of thing. It involves the entire body of the horse. It involves the entire body of the rider.
Which is why all these gadgets and things that just pull the head down and in don't actually work to do what we really need to do in dressage. Yeah, it can put the head into a position, but it doesn't mean anything. Right. It's not real.
Yeah,
it's like I can put on a queen's crown, but doesn't make me a queen. Well, maybe it does, but that's a different story. But you get the point, right? Just because you put the head there doesn't mean that it's valid.
It's not necessarily honest or real.
Yeah.
It's the head and neck of the horse are a balancing device, so they reflect the overall state of affairs in the horse's body: balance, suppleness, relaxation, all kinds of things, right? So wherever the horse puts his head and neck, it's a certain indication of certain things, right? And the more you improve the horse's balance and straightness and suppleness, the more the horse's head and neck will start to come into the shape and the place where we would like them to be, right? But if you were just to put the horse's head and neck into that outline, then it would not necessarily accomplish anything, or it would actually potentially make it impossible for the horse to really balance himself and find true relaxation, right? So, and that's something that we want to talk about a little bit. How do I go about that? So Mario Tejera says, from Bavaria, says, definitely an issue. I've been riding for 6 years and it's still a mystery to some degree. Yeah, that's the same for me back then. I mean, I rode for a number of years before I figured out, how that actually works, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody really explained it well.
And even along the journey, when you think you're starting to figure it out, there's still more to figure out. There's more to it. Right? So it's like an onion, the layers you peel off and you understand more and more and more. So anybody that says, I've got it all figured out, I can do that. You might think that. Even if you're at Grand Prix, there's more to this whole thing. You can always learn more. It really has to do with the whole connection through the horse. Yeah, I know.
So let me read a couple more comments here. It's like Mary Patterson says, good morning. I watched the Circle of Eights last night and now this morning this gift. Oh, thank you.
Awesome.
Glad if it's useful.
Yes.
And
You know what? Before we go further, I don't have a PDF today, but I do want to mention to you that we have a challenge starting next week on contact and connection. So you've noticed we've been doing this theme. So we have a free 5-day challenge starting next week. It runs May 27th through the 31st. There will be 4 of those live sessions. On Thursday, we have a pre-recorded lesson, Feldenkrais lesson, so that we can address some of the rider seat issues on that day. And the other days, we're going to take a new concept that we haven't really applied in our challenges yet. So if you want to know how that's going to work, you need to sign up. So I'm going to put the link to sign up for the challenge. It's free. If you have any problems signing up, just email us at ritterdressage@gmail.com and we'll help you get it figured out. Because occasionally some people have problems. Their email is not accepted or it says it's already taken. It's because you have to log in and stuff like that. So if you've already done a challenge with us and you have trouble signing up, that can be it. Just email us and we'll get it all squared away. So sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to get that out there for everybody. I'm going to put the link in here.
yeah, so just want to read some more comments. Cyan Pedersen says, it's been a huge issue for me because I've been so concerned about riding in a way that's beneficial for the horse, but was unable to do it for so long. In the last 6 months or so, it's finally clicked. I realized I was focusing so much on the head. So when I began to use my leg and seat aids to get the horse to lift his back and engage his hind legs, I finally started getting results. I'm still learning though, so I'm keen to get as much help as I can. Yeah, and I think that's a very typical thing, you know, that initially we get focused very much on the head and try to fix it with the reins, and it doesn't work. And then gradually we discover there's more to it, and it really involves the whole body, right? Leg and seat aids, weight aids.
In a way, you get there by somewhat ignoring the head or just taking a leap of faith that it's going to come together when you work on these other things that we're going to tell you about.
Then Christina Krikovic says, it's an issue for me because I'm not 100% clear about this topic.
Good.
Because of so many different explanations.
Good that
on the bit having
that.
Contact, is this the same? Question mark.
Yeah,
right?
because
So,
I think a lot of people, they're not totally clear on this.
Exactly, it's typical. It's I mean, there's a lot of confusion. It's one of those things like the half vault. Everybody mentions it, talks about it, uses the expression. Nobody explains it because they all assume that everybody knows what it means, right? And that's not necessarily true, right? And yeah, so a good place for the conversation to start would be to define a little bit, what does that mean on the bit, or having contact or connection and all these things, right? I mean, you can differentiate between having contact and being on the bit. I mean, a contact could be like a raw material, you know, as the hind legs swing forward and push the horse's body forward, it's like an energy impulse that travels along the spine. And then if you choose a rein length that's neither too long nor too short, then that energy impulse can reach your hands. If the reins are too long, so they're slack, then nothing reaches your hand, no connection, no contact, right? If you take the slack out of the reins, you will feel a contact with the hind legs. That could be good or bad. That could be rigid or soft. It could be heavy or light, whatever, right? It's that depends on factors like balance and straightness and how much the horse pushes and how much he carries and all kinds of other things, right? But first, then it's a contact like you're picking up the phone and you're saying hello, right? And from that basic contact now, you can develop this being on the bit, you know, durchgeknickt, as we call it in German, right? And through the back and so on and so forth. So it begins with contact, and then you can refine that, right? And the quality and quantity of the contact tells you a lot about the horse's training level overall, about the balance, about the straightness, impulsion, how much the hind legs carry, how much they push, you know, what the ratio is, you know, if they both push and carry the same amount, or if one pushes more than the other, you know, that sort of thing. It tells you something about the suppleness, relaxation of the horse, right? Or if there are stiffnesses and muscle blockages somewhere, it shows you also if there is a hypermobile area, like a false bend in some place where the energy leaves the horse, so it doesn't reach your hands, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So it's a complex thing. It's a gauge that helps you evaluate the quality of everything, almost, right?
Yeah.
It's a tool, with which you can feel the whole horse's body, the rein contact. It's a tool that helps you shape the balance,
shape the horse, the energy balance,
the energy flow.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things involved in it, and when
it's powerful, right?
and when the horse is on the bit, that means that there is an energy transmission from the hind legs along the spine, through the pole, down the horse's head, and you either feel it through the reins and the lower jaw if you're riding with a bit, or you feel it through the horse's nose if you have a bitless bridle, right? But you feel that energy connection either way if it's there. If it's not there, you don't feel anything, right? And so and that energy transmission from back to front to the hand, and then from your hand the reins through your midsection, your seat, back to the hind legs, can only be established if the horse and rider meet certain requirements, right? There's certain conditions that have to be met, right? So one of them would be, for example, that there is no obstacle in the path in the form of muscle tension. Like if the horse locks up his paw or his jaw, for example, then the energy impulse can't travel through, right? And your rein aids can't travel through that blockage to the hind legs either. So the energy connection has to go in both directions, back to front, hind legs to reins, but also in the other direction from rein through your seat back to the hind legs, right? So no muscle blockages, right? And in reality, of course, every horse is stiff somewhere, just like every human is stiff somewhere, right? So that's something we always need to work on in every training session. We have to try and find tight areas in the horse's body, stiff muscles that we can then loosen up and relax with gymnastic exercises, right? We also need to have a steady connection. So like when you have a garden hose, it only works if there's no hole in that garden hose. Otherwise, all the water will exit through the hole and nothing will come out in front, right? And it's the same with false bends. Like if the base of the neck is hypermobile, or if the third cervical vertebra is disconnected, right? And you see this angle in the top line, right? Straight line coming up, and then this angle, and then a straight line going forward or a little slightly down, then that's a break in the energy connection too. So that would be a problem. Yeah, and in order for the horse to be relaxed and to let go, right, to open up to the rider's seat and aids and the energy flow, and to release the pole, etc., the horse has to be balanced, and he has to be straight to some extent, right? So basically, it all starts by choosing a line of travel for the horse and putting the horse's feet on that, right? That has to do with straightness. If the horse is crooked, he'll always try to leave that line of travel, either with the front legs or with the hind legs. Something will always drift to one side or the other, right? And by correcting that and bringing the feet back on the line, you're straightening the horse, which then affects the weight distribution between the left side and the right side of the body, right? And you need to ride the line that you chose in a certain tempo, stride length, and energy level. Not too fast, not too slow, not too much power, not too little power, right? If there's too little power, then the energy impulse fizzles out before it reaches the front, right? If you have too much power, then it throws the horse's body mass into your hand, and it's like a steamroller, right? That you can't regulate or stop anymore. So it has to be in a healthy range, between too much and too little. And then that helps the horse balance himself front to back, between front legs and hind legs. And when the horse is balanced, he can relax the outer layer of muscles, especially, so that essentially the muscles in the horse's body that are responsible for balance and posture are used for that. And the muscles that are used or responsible for movement are used only for movement and
not balance and posture.
For balance and posture, exactly. And when the horse loses balance, he will have to use some of his outer movement muscles to prevent himself from falling down. So they suddenly have to create stability. It's like with us in the saddle, if we lose, if we are in balance, right? If we use our postural muscles along the spine for balance and stability, we can relax our arms and legs. So we can now communicate with our horse through our arms and legs and apply it in a fine way. Exactly, in a refined way. And if we lose balance, we have to hang on. Like we will grip with our hands and legs.
With the legs, hang on with the hands,
exactly.
all sorts of
things. Because otherwise we fall off, right?
Hang on with the reins.
And then for balance, when we hang on the reins and grip with our legs, then our muscles are hard, but then we get in the way of the horse's movement. And with these hard, stiff muscles, we can't feel anything, right? And the fine communication is no longer possible, essentially, right? So that's leads to the requirements of the rider's seat, right? To be able to
big component, right?
So to be able to ride the horse on the bit. So the one thing is that the rider has to facilitate these horse prerequisites, right? So you have to be able to put the horse's feet on the line of travel. You have to be able to regulate the tempo and you make it a little faster, a little slower, a little more energy, a little less energy, these sort of things, right? Then you have to be able to allow the energy to flow through the body. In other words, you have to be balanced in your seat and relatively straight, right? Because if you're crooked, the horse becomes crooked, right? If you're unbalanced, the horse becomes unbalanced. The horse can only be as balanced or straight as the rider, or as supple as the rider. Any tightness, tension, stiffness we have in our body will communicate itself to the horse. It's unfortunate and it's kind of mean, but it's the way it is, So we have to be able to facilitate the energy flow through the body. In other words, we have to sit in such a way that we're not interrupting that energy flow somewhere, right? And there's many different ways in which we can interrupt the energy flow. For example, if we sit too heavily, if we press down with our seat bones too much, or even if we're just like really floppy, so we're soft in our body but heavy as a result, right? Because we're not in self-carriage, we're not supporting ourselves. That can depress the horse's back, especially if we're tall and have a certain weight, and the horses may be small or sensitive in their backs. Then a heavy seat or hard seat can really drop the horse's back, and then they invert, and then they can't go on the bit because the energy gets stuck in our seat bones. Our seat bones block the energy flow. Right? If we have a stiff hip on one side, the hind leg on that side won't be able to really move and step under the body, and then the back can't lift and swing. And so there's, again, a compromise in the energy flow. If we have stiff wrists, the horse will start bracing his jaw and pull against us, or tighten the underneck, brace with the underneck. You get this hard braced bulging muscle in the underneck over time if somebody always balances on the rein. So that interrupts the energy flow. Right. So then you have to have a good connection from your seat or your body weight to your elbows, right? So that the reins go to your hips. So it's reins, hands, forearms are all one piece, like they're made from the same piece of material. And the reins attach or feel like they attach to your hips and lumbar spine, not to your shoulders, right? So whatever contact the horse makes should not travel up your upper arm into your shoulder, because it's a dead end and it gets stuck there. And then the horse could actually pull you forward onto the neck. But it should connect to your pelvis, so that if anything happens and the horse leans on you, or the horse tries to push on you, push on the reins, he will pull your pelvis closer to the pommel instead of pulling your shoulders forward. Because if the reins connect to your pelvis and anything happens, you get pulled forward and down deeper into the saddle, and it creates a half hold. The horse half holds himself, essentially, right? Because he feels that movement of your pelvis in his hips, in his pelvis, his own pelvis, and that creates a half hold. Whereas if the reins connect to your shoulders and the contact dead ends there, and the horse leans on you or pushes his head down, for example, to pull the reins out of your hands, then he will lift you up and forward and out of the saddle, and then it takes the weight off of the horse's hind end, where instead of putting more weight onto the hind end, right? And then they often discover that it's a great thing to create relief, and then they do it more and more and more, right? So the horses that root, that pull the reins out of the rider's hands, they have learned that from riders who connected the reins to their shoulders instead of their pelvis, and the horse then realized, I have power over the rider, I can leverage the rider out of the saddle, right, with their own body weight. And so you want the connection from your seat through the elbows and forearms to the bit. And if you have that connection, the horse will accept the rein contact, and the horse will accept rein aids that you apply. Whereas if you don't have the connection from the elbow, forearm to your pelvis and your body weight, then the horse will argue even with a contact sometimes, and sometimes they even hate it if you touch the reins at all, and they will certainly argue against any half foot.
Yeah, these horses that people say, my horse doesn't like any contact, it's not about the rein. You think it's about the seat.
It's typically it's the that the
usually
reins don't connect
98% of the time. It's actually about the rider's seat. Yeah. Exactly. Which is good news, because that's something you can actually work on and fix.
Yeah.
That's something you can do something about, If you have a horse that just has doesn't like something, Yeah.
Yeah. So in your seat, you have to then create a certain stability and independence, just like a horse has to discover his postural muscles, so to speak, and use them for balance and stability, etc., posture, so that his movement muscles can take care of movement. And in the same sense, we have to do the same. We have to create stability and balance with the muscles along our spine, so that our hip joints, knees, ankles, elbows, shoulders, wrists, fingers are free to move. They can relax, right? If we don't have that stability along our spine, then typically the hip joints lock up, right? And that blocks the movement of the horse's back. And then we become uncomfortable for the horse to carry, right? We can't absorb the movement of the horse's back in our seat. And then typically the horse braces right back against us because it feels uncomfortable to the horse. Then so they tighten the back. They may tighten their hip joints too, push the croup up, and then so the horse is not on the bit anymore because he's not really balanced. He's not supple, not using his back properly, etc. So then you'll see this in the head and neck position, right? And you will feel that the rein contact is hard or dead or heavy, or you feel like your aids don't go through, so there's not a really effective communication between the hind legs and the reins, for example. So and that's a big issue for the rider, typically, to learn how to create this stability in your torso without becoming stiff, without bracing with your hips, without gripping with your legs, etc. And on the other hand, it's hard to figure out how can I be soft in my seat and leg and rein hands without being floppy, So it's always combining two polar opposites almost, right?
Right.
So, and then the real issue is or the solution is really to use the right muscles for stability, right? So that you can relax others. That's a longer project, of course, and ultimately it's a lifelong journey, really, to improve and refine. Even if you have a decent seat and you can sit the big trot and stuff, there's still usually things you can do to make it more effective, make it more effortless. So you use less strength, so you can relax a little bit more.
It's something you can always continue to polish through your lifetime as a rider.
Right.
We had a couple of comments on here to the initial question.
Yeah.
Sam said it's definitely an issue for most riders, I think, myself included. I have techniques I use to get the horse on the bit, but it's keeping them there that I often find the problem. And James Purcell said, it was a problem at first, but I have a much better understanding now. I'm now at that point where it fluctuates. So those are sort of both the same thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Becky Norris said to create a contact and softness in the neck pole, etc., is gently squeezing your fingers on the rein correct, or is that a quick fix? Yeah, that's something you hear often as a recommendation to, I don't know, play with the reins.
Play with the reins, fiddle the reins, yeah.
I'm not a fan, I have to say.
Sponging or squeezing,
because that can
or keep the fingers moving. These are all variations.
That can lead to like a mechanical fiddling that has no communicative purpose in a sense. I mean, the idea behind that, squeezing is that your hands should not become rigid. They should not be dead, right? And that's true. But you can also have a live connection without moving your fingers actively, just by staying relaxed and soft in your forearm muscles, wrists, hand muscles, fingers, and so on. And I would only really do something with my fingers if I want to ask a question or tell the horse to do something, like, half halt or bend or something. It could be anything, right? Even if you want to check in with the horse to see, are you still awake? Are you still there? Are you still listening? You could give a little squeeze on the reins just to check. How does the horse receive that? Is he aware of it?
Or to feel where does this go in the horse's body? What is my response that I get from the horse?
Yeah. So there should always be a communicative intent,
even if it's just a question like, are you still there, and how are you feeling? And you can tune into the horse this way, but it shouldn't be this kind of this mechanical just kind of playing with the reins like this. Becomes like chatter. And for instance, and I used this analogy the other day and I'm going to use it again, if I just start chattering about something that he has no interest in, he is going to completely tune me out. And then I'm like, Thomas, and he's like, huh?
Are you talking?
Yeah, exactly.
Talking to me?
Blah, 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 right? Because it doesn't mean anything to him. So he doesn't pay attention until I get his attention. Same thing with the horse. The horse will decide this is meaningless and will start to tune it out. And you don't really want that because you want the horse to always be listening and ready for you so that you can speak with a whisper, because otherwise you have to go, hello, are you paying attention to me? And this, is a hindrance to find communication. Then you actually have to get their attention before you can say anything. Whereas if I'm speaking like this, he's paying attention, especially if I'm talking about guitars. See? Ooh, his ears perked forward. Did you see that? So, when you're chattering, the horse tunes out, and then you have to do something more to get the horse's attention. So then it is the antithesis to fine riding, because then you have to give a bigger aid if this becomes the norm, right? Then you have to give a bigger aid just to get the horse's attention.
Now, with any aid, there should always be an idea behind it of what am I trying to achieve? What am I trying to tell the horse? So, am I asking a question? Am I giving an order, so to speak? Do I want the horse to do something? Or am I just checking how the horse feels about this body part or being touched in that body part? So it's when you have that idea of this is really kind of what I'm trying to do with it, then you need to pay attention to the horse's response, right? The horse needs to give you a reaction, whether it's good or bad, doesn't matter, but there has to be some sort of
information.
Yeah, the horse has to acknowledge that you're addressing him, right? And then he has to respond in some way. And then you can have a dialogue about that. Right?
Even if it's just that you feel the horse is paying attention, it doesn't have to mean that the horse, flexes the joints more or collects more, slows down or stops or any of these things. Just that the horse is, you can feel the horse is like ready for the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, it could be very subtle, so that you're essentially asking the horse, well, would you be able to bend this way if I wanted you to? Or would you be able to
Yes.
flex the hind leg more if I wanted
Good
to?
point.
And then if you feel like, yeah, it feels soft and the horse is paying attention, he's ready to do it, then you can say, okay, never mind, I'm just
You
checking.
can just, with that, you can feel it's like, I'm going to ask you if you can bend without asking you to bend,
Right.
you know, and you can feel that whether the horse would comply or not,
Right.
and be able to just very easily bend. And if the horse can't, then, well, then you know you need to address this. It's something that needs to be addressed. But you have to find out why the horse can't and eliminate what's in the way.
Right.
But that's going off into a different subject. But these can be little bits of communication. And that's the point. The other thing I think that is worth going into with this fiddling is that you have to ask what the intention of it is. Is the intention to make the horse more through? Because throughness doesn't happen here with the reins doing this. Throughness actually happens by this whole body connection of the horse, right?
Circle of eights.
The circle of
energy
eights.
circuit.
Yeah, if you've missed those Facebook Lives, I recommend you go and watch them. And if you, I'm going to post later today links to all of them so you can watch, you can catch up wherever you are on any of them. So stay tuned for that. Since this is the last one in this series, we might add another one next week or something, or the week after. We'll see. We'll see. But anyway, this just is addressing when you're just doing this kind of playing with the reins, like a lot of people teach. You're just addressing the head and neck. You're not addressing the whole rest of the horse, which is actually the most important part. That this happens as a result of all of that.
Yeah, the fiddling can lead to a disconnect at the base of the neck, right? The horses then sometimes overbend laterally, or they curl up a little bit to get away from it.
Oh, I'll put my head into place like a headset, right? Many years ago, I started with quarter horses, riding the whole quarter horse circuit. And this was something that we used to teach the horses way back then, was, this little like this, and the horse would immediately just put the head in its headset. And you could like dictate to the horse where to put the head, and the head would stay there. It had nothing to do with the rest of the horse. It was a trained response. And that's all it was.
Right.
It's not what we do in dressage at all.
It doesn't, if the horse just learns to tuck in his head, then there is no more honest communication.
There's no dialogue anymore.
Then you don't really know, you don't really feel so much what's going on in the horse, right? Because he's essentially withdrawing from the conversation, and you can't reach him very well.
And the horse can be a robot then, but he can't be a partner. And that's not what we want. We want to engage the horse in a dialogue, so the horse is an active participant in what we do.
Some people do that a little bit on purpose to disconnect the base of the neck, because then the head will always be down, the neck will always be round, regardless of whether the horse is balanced or not, crooked or straight, through or not, tight or relaxed, right? It doesn't show up in the neck anymore. It covers it up in a sense, right?
Which might sound nice to you right now, but it actually prevents authentic conversation and progress.
And if the horse is connected in all its body parts and so on, then any change in balance will show up in the head and neck, right? The head will go a little higher, a little lower, or any crookedness will also result in a change in the head and neck position and so on. So it's obvious to everybody then that something just went wrong, something
but then also
changed,
obvious
right?
to you.
But exactly.
Which is the really great thing, that it's right there in front of you. You can see what's going on. You don't have to.
You can fix it then.
And you can fix it. Exactly.
Yeah, whereas if the head is always down, regardless of how straight or balanced or crooked the horse is, then you may not feel it sometimes when things start to go wrong in the horse's body, right? And then it catches up to you later.
And you can't always access the rest of the horse so well, because part of what we do with the reins is we actually talk to all the body parts of the horse. As strange as that might sound, if you haven't experienced this, it's possible that the reins can actually communicate with all of the other body parts of the horse. But if the horse is just putting its head into a place that has nothing to do with the rest of the horse, you can't. This communication line is broken. And then the rein actually doesn't communicate to those body parts, and you can't influence them with the rein. So it actually prevents your further progress. You'll get an illusion of progress to a point, and then it prevents future progress. So, and we're all about authentic riding, authentic progress, authentic communication with the horse. And so this is not what we want to do. And if you're watching this, it's probably also what you don't want to do.
So Christina Krikowicz said, that's a great explanation. Thank you. And Georgia Dolman says, I'm really trying to work on my contact with my thoroughbred and concentrating on using my seat and legs to push him forward. I'm interested to know what your opinion is on how much weight we should feel in our hands when the horse has a correct contact and is using his back correctly. That's a hard question to answer because it depends on conformation of the horse to some extent, a little bit on temperament. It depends on balance. It depends a little bit on the training level. It will change, right? Initially, you just have to receive whatever the horse puts into your hand, and that could be too much, it could be too little, it could be uneven, too much on one side, not enough on the other side. And then you try to refine it, right? By helping the horse become more balanced, become straighter, become more supple through his body. So the quality and the quantity will hopefully change and improve. And then everybody has their own ideas. Some people actually like having a lot of weight in their hands, right? And some people don't want any weight in their hands. Like some people maybe had injuries and it hurts them if the horse leans on them, right? So I've had students like that. So they have to make work on balancing the horse to such an extent that there is very, very little weight in your hands, right? So the other side of that, if the horse is super light, right, and super sensitive, then you have to be super coordinated in order not to offend him. Because if you have any kind of movement that was not intentional, that wasn't communicating something, the horse might get hurt, so to speak, get his feelings hurt, or get annoyed with you because now you're bumping him in his mouth.
Or you get something you don't want. Like, for example, we've all heard these, or experienced these situations where a relative beginner gets to ride a really highly trained horse, and the horse is passaging and doing fine changes all over the place, and they have no idea how to control it or to stop it. That sort of situation. It's like driving a highly tuned sports car, race car. They're not easy to drive at all, and this highly tuned and sensitive horse is not so easy to ride either if you don't have the skills to do it.
Right. Yeah. So it has to be a contact that works for both of you, that feels pleasant. It needs to be enough that you can feel the hind leg in your hand, right? You feel the hind leg reaching forward, touching down, creates a slight pulse, like a slight impulse in your fingers. If you don't feel that, then there is probably no connection there so there's not enough push or enough energy coming from the hind legs through the spine, right? Or it gets blocked somewhere on the path. So you need to feel a little something, right, in your hands. But you should not feel like you're holding the horse's front end up, right? And you should feel like when you squeeze your fingers and you give a half hold, a combination of rein and seat, and however you do it, there should be a response. You should feel the horse lets it go through, and then he's a little lighter afterwards for a few strides at least, right? Better self-carriage, maybe slower tempo, maybe shorter strides, depending on what you wanted to achieve with your rein half holds, right? Because there could be different goals to the half hold, right? So that's a thing we had talked about in different.
Right. Some half holds slow the horse down. Right. Some of them collect the horse. Some of them, change the balance, collect the horse.
So there needs to be a response and a little improvement of the horse's balance afterwards. So you feel like you buy yourself time where you don't have to do anything with the rein, right? Because the horse is now in a better balance. And Gustav Steinbrecht writes that the rein contact is okay as long as you feel like your rein aids still go through to the hind legs, right? When you feel like the horse is just leaning on you and you can squeeze and half hold all you want, but it never changes. Like you half hold, you release, and the horse just falls right back into your hand. He never actually sat and became lighter. Then the half hold didn't go through, and then it's too much. So, and you may find that there are phases in your horse's training where he will take a little bit more contact, maybe because the back is still weak and the hind legs are still weak.
Yeah.
And then as they get stronger, they can carry themselves better. So you have a lighter contact. So
it's something I wanted to bring up, that it evolves over time. It has many changes, and sometimes the changes are good, sometimes they're momentarily not as good, and it's just part of the evolution and the development of the horse. It's going to change. It has to change. That's part of this. I have a great comment from Kim. She said, I wanted to say thank you for the explanation of the reins going through to the pelvis. It really turned on a light in my mind. I never heard it explained that way before. Also, I am or was a hand fiddler, and it turns out I was annoying my horse and getting her off of the bit. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what happens. Right?
Yes.
It gets irritating to the horse, and then they retract, and some of them shorten their neck because they don't really want to have anything to do with that fiddling, because it's like empty chatter, right?
Yes.
And yeah, it's interesting. It's great that this connection of the reins to the pelvis made sense, and that helped. Yeah. So, yeah. Then David Mello says there's a little echo coming through. It's one of the speakers on, computer speakers now. We have our speakers turned off, so it might be somewhere else. And Mario and Shirley say no echo here, so it might be an issue on David's
system. Yeah. Sometimes it can help. This is running through Facebook, right? And sometimes it can be a little glitchy. We all know Facebook has glitches. It might be helpful to open this in another browser window and close this one down. Sometimes it's just a simple fix like that. That also, you guys, if you ever have it freeze, try that on these Facebook Lives. Try opening it in a different browser window. It can help fix it.
Marion Wilson says, so enjoying listening and applying your practical advice to our forest adventures. Love from Australia.
Yay.
Great. So then Angela McLeod says, I thought the legs had to stabilize the spine, not by gripping, just by being on the horse with the knee and heel down, helping to push the stomach forward and bracing the lower back, until I watched a video of a Paralympic rider with no legs in a really good seat. Yeah. I mean, the legs do have a stabilizing function in the same way that the keel of a ship has a stabilizing function, because they have a certain weight and length, and if they hang down, they do form a counterbalance to the torso, or like roots of a tree, they also stabilize the tree and prevent the tree from falling over. Right?
The spine needs support. So, and because we have legs, we can use the legs to help get that support. But it's not by gripping, as you know, Angela, you have realized. But these riders that can ride with, shorter legs, I don't know how to describe this, or very little leg at all, they find their support. They just find it in a different way. So the point is, the spine has to have support. The seat has to have support. And how you get that might change. It might be different depending on your body, but it's possible. Yeah.
Katharina van Treyen says, hand comes first. De la Guérinière. I don't think he said that. And the thing is, the hand can only talk to the body of the horse if the horse makes contact to your hand. If you use your hand first without creating an energy impulse from the hind legs, then you're working front to back, and the horse will contract and get behind the aids and can develop some dangerous habits. Right? Even Francois Boucher said you should always use your leg first, and then, like the leg brings the horse to the seat brings the horse to the hand, and then the hand can help recycle the energy.
Yeah. Lisa, dealing with the asymmetry also, we have had a number of the straightness challenges, but we also will do another one coming up this summer. So stay tuned for that. And that helps to deal with the asymmetry.
Yeah, Lisa is asking, laterality or sideness is real asymmetry in horses and riders. Do you identify laterality to optimize your ambidextrous shaping program? Yeah, we have a whole course on straightness.
We have a straightness course, and we have a challenge that precedes that. Coming out this summer.
Yeah, David Mello says, great explanation, trying to explain
summer for us. It might not be summer for you, it might be winter. It just occurred to me. We're in Germany, our summer.
Yeah. So David Mellis is trying to explain that to Western pleasure riders is really hard to
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is.
That's the background I came from, so I understand. It takes a real shift in thinking and understanding, but it's possible. I did it.
So Mario says, let's say I'm in the walk on a straight line, moving forward nicely. I pick up the reins and lean my calf softly on my mare. I can get contact, but after a certain point, she starts stargazing. I drop the reins and start again. How can I deal with light head tossing when I'm looking for contact? Same happens in rising trot. Actually, riding straight lines on a single track is the hardest thing you can do because the horses can very easily brace against you. It's easier, especially when you're trying to put the horse on the bit. It's easier if you go on a circle line and ask the inside hind to yield a little to your inside leg that could be in the shape of enlarging the circle a couple of steps, right? So the lateral bend of the horse's spine helps you to prevent the horse from bracing against you, and because that sticking the head up is usually also accompanied by bracing the belly muscles, you know, becoming rigid in the rib cage. Maybe the hind legs are out behind. And the thing is, when you're riding a straight line on a single track and you drive with your leg, a lot of horses will then just brace their belly muscles against you and stick the croup up and they push themselves forward. You know, maybe they get faster. So the front legs and hind legs actually come farther apart rather than closer together. And you can fix that much more easily if you do a circle and you ask the inside hind to cross slightly. You could also let the croup yield onto a slightly larger circle. It could be like a little bit of a leg yield. And it doesn't have to be much angle, just a little bit, just so you feel like now the inside hind leg is coming more under the body and the horse can soften a little underneath, in the rib cage underneath you. And you could half hold into the outside hind a little bit, so you flex that. So you tell the horse, step under with that inside hind, but don't get faster. Keep your tempo, half hold, right? And as a result of that, sending the horse a little forward and out from the inside leg into your outside leg and rein, then you could even then flex a little with the inside rein afterwards, right? And then the horse will become softer because he's more balanced and he can relax a little bit more. And we talked about that in the Circle of the Eights video. So that's usually what works best, is usually the easiest thing to do, right? And then when you have the horse on the bit, then you can go straight, right? And try to maintain the balance and the throughness and so on. But to walk on a long rein, and pick the rein up on a straight line is much, much more difficult. It's a lot easier on circles or voltas. It could be, a bigger or smaller circle, and you could ask either front legs and hind legs to move out a little bit as enlarging the circle a little bit, or you can do it by asking just the croup to yield a little to the outside, right?
Yep.
And that usually gives you a very good way into or beginning of developing rein contact and riding the horse on the bit, right? And if a resistance comes up, then you can dissolve it better because you can address it in a slightly lateral direction rather than having to do it in a straight back to front or front to back kind of direction that creates a lot more resistance and conflict, whereas if you can take it a little bit from the side, nudge a little from the side, move the rib cage of the horse a little sideways, you can let the rib cage swing out more like a pendulum, and that dissolves the resistance a lot faster. The horses get softer faster.
So I just posted the links to the replays for the Circle of the Eights and the half halt for those of you that need to refer back to those.
Oh, Kathy Haywood Rand says, hi, I'm interested to know your thoughts on keeping the connection during a stretch and also on the give and retake in the GNR. That is not. It used to be taught that the horse should keep the same outline, but recently I had a comment in a test that the horse didn't reach forward with my hand, so I'm not sure whether he should reach forward or stay in outline. Well, there are two different things, really. there's one thing that we call überstreichen, right?
Where you completely disconnect the contact with one rein or the other rein, or
And
with
the
both
horse should
reins.
keep the balance and the positioning and everything. The horse shouldn't change. The horse stays on the seat.
You keep him on the
holds
seat.
the horse there.
Yeah, you keep him
Okay.
on the seat.
And so you give the reins, but the horse doesn't stretch.
Mhm.
The horse doesn't
Right.
change.
And that's a
And-
test of self-carriage, right?
Yes.
It's basically the judges want to see whether you're holding him together with your leg and rein, or whether you have him on the seat, right?
Mhm.
So that's something that comes out of the old German cavalry tradition, right? And when you yield with the inside rein completely, you want to see if the horse is bending correctly, or if you're just pulling the head to the inside, right? If you give the inside rein and the neck goes to the outside of the bend, then the horse clearly wasn't really balanced and straight enough. He's still leaning on the inside shoulder and compensates by looking to the outside, and whatever bend you had before was just the inside rein pulling, right?
Mhm.
So
It's
it's
a
a good
test.
test, right, for yourself and for the judge, of course. It makes certain things obvious. But
Forward downward is different.
Mhm.
You're actually the seat, rather than holding the horse there,
Mhm.
the seat is the one that tells the horse whether to stay
Mhm.
up and balance or to
Right.
go ahead and follow the stretch.
Right.
So the seat's the conductor, really.
Right, right.
The conductor of the
Conductor
orchestra.
of the orchestra of the eights,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Exactly.
was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the seat says, okay, go ahead and follow. I'm giving the reins, and it tells the horse, go ahead and follow that.
Mhm. Right.
So rather than holding the
Mhm.
horse up in here, the seat lets the horse
Right.
out a little bit
Yeah.
and encourages the aids encourage the horse to seek that
Mhm.
out
Yeah.
and follow it forward downward.
Yeah. Udo Bürger actually says the horse should not stretch just because you're lengthening the rein. The horse should stretch because your seat is allowing him or telling him to do it, right?
So good. That
So
is so good.
that's profound, and he's the
Mm.
only author, I think, who writes about that. And so that's a good thing to keep in the back of your mind. So again, you have to be clear in your own mind, what do you want to achieve by yielding the rein, right? And there could be many different things, and there are many different degrees of yielding, right? The Überstreichen is kind of extreme. You completely drop the contact, right? And you see
For a moment.
for two, three strides, not really much more. And then you see if you can maintain the same tempo, the same outline, the same balance, same bend, etc., or if anything changes, right? If the horse is balanced and on your seat, all these things stay the same, right?
Mhm.
Whether you give the rein or you keep the rein or you give both reins, it doesn't matter, right? And then if you want to let the horse stretch forward downward, then you let the horse chew the reins out of your hands. That's the translation of a German expression, right? So essentially feed the reins inch by inch, and your seat lets the horse go down, and there should be a connection the whole time, right?
The driving aids are there, maybe not actively going forward, but kind of nudging the horse to follow that, to seek that extra room out. It's like you create a little space by letting the reins out. The seat says open, the door is open, and the leg says, please follow that.
Yeah, and it's also a test of sorts, right? Because you want the tempo to stay the same. You want the horse to stay balanced. So you don't want the horse to fall on his forehead and run away.
The stretching forward downward can happen without the horse necessarily falling on the forehand.
Right, exactly. You should stay in balance. You should keep the belly muscles engaged in the back and the withers lifted, which is not so easy to do,
If the horse
actually.
speeds up the tempo, it means the horse is falling on the forehand.
Right. And that probably means that the hind legs hadn't really yielded yet. You were still balancing a little with the reins
Or the
so
horse
on,
just
right?
lacks the muscles so far to
lacks
do
the
this
strength.
well.
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't even have to mean that anything is really wrong with what you've been doing thus far. Just the horse lacks the strength to do this well yet.
Yeah.
It's just keep working on it and keep testing for it. And it's a little bit the hot and cold game, right? As you see there's a little improvement, you know you're on the right track. And if it gets worse, you know you're not on the right track. So it's a good test in that for yourself in your training. Besides that, it also develops the horse's top line really nicely to the horse to be able to go from being in upward forward balance to stretching forward downward and back and forth. This is really, really useful.
Yeah, and then in the German tradition, there is a distinction between riding on a long rein, which is sort of that kind of a forward downward stretch where you have a connection. And then there's riding on a loose rein where you have no connection, right? You're walking on a loose rein, as you begin with the ride or as you take a break. So there's all these different, things you can do, variations and concepts and stuff. So so you have to think about what do you want to achieve, right? You can also release the reins a little bit to see if the horse needs more room. Maybe, maybe he needs to a little slightly longer rein to be able to lengthen the neck and lift the back and the withers more, right? So that's what, from that perspective, is sometimes good to test that, just release a little bit, or a good way to do it is to open your fingers a little bit, relax your forearm muscles, wrists, hands completely, and so the horse can take as much rein as he needs. So you try to keep him on the seat, your seat stays engaged, you try to keep the balance that you had with your seat, but you open your fingers and see, well, what happens. Is the horse going to take a little bit more rein? If he does, then I was probably holding him a little too much, or the reins were too short. If he doesn't take more rein, then it was okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if the horse then just grabs the rein and pulls the whole rein away from you, then you didn't quite have him on the seat yet either, right? So it's also a good thing. It's like not quite like Überstreichen, but it's like offering to the horse. Would you like a little bit more if you need?
Yeah.
That sometimes they lift the back more and they lengthen the neck and they drop the paw a little. Then you realize, oh, I was holding a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that's good to do here and there in your ride, especially if you're wondering, is the rein length okay? Is it too long, too short? You can do things like
Can
that.
I do what I'm doing now with a slightly longer neck?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Can I invite the horse to lengthen than just the neck a little bit more? And you can do this in little increments.
So Mary Patterson says, I do feel my horse responds to my half halt. He's sensitive, but when he finds something a bit more difficult, he can sometimes curl in front to evade. Working on his straightness and balance has really helped us. Is there anything else I can do to address this? Yeah, that's what's happening there, is that you're asking for something more challenging where the hind legs have to carry more weight. And then very often the horse's initial reaction is to look for an easier alternative. It's like, hey, wait a minute, life was good until now. Like, why do I?
Wait, that's hard.
I know. So,
I'd rather not.
Yeah, and some of them curl up, some of them might go a little bit above the bit, some of them may lean on you, take more contact with the bit in order to relieve the hind leg. Some of them get
or
crooked.
Just to find a way to do it,
right.
Like trying to get up off of the floor from a sitting position to standing without using your arms, just using your balance, and that's hard. So you might, use your hand to push yourself up, or grab a chair to, use somebody's hand, that sort of thing. So initially, if you lack the strength to be able to do it well, you might need some help. But over time, especially if you practice this, it's going to get better.
Right. Yeah.
Same thing for the horse.
If your horse curls up when you do something more difficult, you could activate the hind leg, send him a little bit forward, and then see if the head comes up. Or often what brings the head up again is any side-to-side movement, like little zigzags. It could be a zigzag in forward motion. It could be a little full pass left and right, turn on the forehand left and right. Anything where the weight has to move from one side to the other, and that usually brings the head up. And then if he was curled up at the beginning of that correction exercise, then it could be that this exercise makes him invert a little bit, then he's above the bit, which is okay. At least he's talking to you again, and then you can exactly. Then you could flex a little bit, take the bracing out of the underneck or the paw, whatever.
Then you can adjust that, but it's in a way it's more authentic. When the horse is curling up, he's saying, I don't want to hear you, I don't want to hear you, I don't want to hear you, I don't want to deal with this. And so you have to do something. The sideways stepping really helps with that, to kind of bring the horse back present again. And then the issues that were there, you can now deal with. Any bracing and underneck, it's still there. When the horse is curled up, you just can't access it. You can't get to it. When we can get the horse to be more authentic and where he really should be, then we can start to address what shows up. So if the horse is not bending correctly, you can use the rein to help get a better bend. Yeah, you can. And if the horse is bracing in the underneck, there's things you can do to get the horse to help release that tension. And if the horse is bracing in the poll, there's flexions and things so that we can do to help release that tension in the poll. So there's things you can do, but you can't do any of that if the horse is curled up. So first step is to get the horse not to curl up.
So Mary Patterson says, love the seat being a conductor, but the horse stealing the elbows is a great descriptor. Yeah, it's how it feels sometimes.
Yes.
Kathy Haywood Rand says, thank you so much. Great explanation of the give and retake. Can't spell Uber Duda, sorry.
Uber Duda, I know.
It's a good
Uber Duda.
Überstreichen, I know. It's a German word. That's
Maybe you
hard.
could type it in for them. Could you?
Yeah, hold on here.
Uber Duda, I love it.
I know. Yeah. In the US at least, that's a technical term, Überstreich, and they use that in the tests.
Yes, it is.
So I don't know about South Africa, other parts of the world, maybe that they don't use it.
I have no idea. I haven't seen the tests in other parts of the world.
They do that. And it shows up pretty regularly in some dressage tests.
It changes
different levels.
Changes every time they change the tests. They change them around. I have no idea what they look like right now.
Yeah. So then David Meller says, can you explain the pelvis to rein connection a bit more? Yeah, it's picture, your forearms and hips, forearms and elbows being part of the pelvis, as if you didn't have upper arms, right? But your forearms and hands are like extensions of the pelvis forward. And in the same way that you could picture your legs being extensions of your seat bones going down, vertically down more or less, right? And your hands, forearms go attached to the pelvis, go forward. So that whatever traction the horse puts on the rein doesn't go up your upper arm to your shoulders, but it goes from your elbow to your hip and from your hip to the horse's hip, right? To the horse's hind leg. Maybe you can also picture the reins being like one long rein, like a lunge line that you attach on one side, of the bit or the nose of the horse, and run it around the small of your back, right? And forward again to the other bit ring or the other side of the nose. So then if you imagine that if the horse sticks his nose out and he puts any contact, any weight into the reins, you will feel it in your back. You will not feel it in your shoulder. I mean, you'll feel it in your pelvis, right? The lower end of the back. You won't feel it in your shoulder. And then the rein goes all the way around you, and then you could put your hands a little on it, right? But then the rein goes all the way through and around. So that might be also a picture you could use.
Yeah.
So
visual. Yeah. The rein doesn't actually go around you.
Yeah. So if you, no, I mean, you can imagine that, right?
Yeah.
That the rein wraps around you,
Yeah.
And then you can think of using the rein by activating certain torso muscles, right? Or sometimes the horses will lean on you, and because they lose balance, and then the instinct of the rider is usually to hold that with their hands or catch that with their hands. Now you could imagine your hands just being links in a chain. They don't do anything themselves, but they transmit impulses, from one end to the other end. And then when the horse falls into your hands and leans, you could try and catch that with your core muscles, right? Back muscles, oblique muscles, abs. Because you will feel it. If the horse gets heavy, you will feel it in your back. You puts a little certain strain on your back muscles. If you have the connection. If not, you feel it in your arms, right? And you feel like my upper arms are aching when a horse is really heavy, then your arms are more connected to your shoulders, not to the pelvis, right? But if you feel it in your back muscles, then you have the connection, right?
Yeah, Catherine McCrum, our Feldenkrais practitioner that teaches in our courses, said something that was really interesting the other day. She said that this can only happen when the shoulder girdle is supported by the pelvis. I believe that's what she said. And so when it's not, that's when the horse can take your elbows, your arms, and your shoulders away from you. When it's totally supported, then it's connected, right? And then the rein aids can be connected to the pelvis. So the shoulders do play a part. They just play a part in needing to be connected to the pelvis. I believe that is correct. Catherine, if you're watching this and I got that wrong, please type it in the comments and let me know too. Because of course, I want to get that right. We're incorporating a lot of Feldenkrais concepts into our teaching. It's really quite fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah,
just
it
looking
sounded
if
like
there
I
are
was going
more.
to say
No,
more, I know,
no.
but
I'm just looking if there are more comments, but that was sort of the end here. Is there
yeah,
anything on
no,
Zoom?
nothing more on Zoom.
Okay, very good.
So with that, I guess then, if there was nothing more, we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
Again, I want to remind everybody that we have a 5-day challenge starting on Monday, May 27th. It runs through May 31st, and it's totally free. It's a contact and connection challenge. And we do have 1 day with a Feldenkrais exercise. So if you have gotten a taste for the other Feldenkrais stuff we've been doing and you like it, then you're going to love this. And if you have no idea what Feldenkrais is or what we're even talking about with that, then join the challenge and you'll get a taste for it. It's really interesting. It's a very subtle way of influencing the seat in the body.